The committee will now move on to Resolution 21-0069R, Investigative Hearing, Well-Being of the Transgender Community in Baltimore, for the purpose of inviting representatives from the Mayor's Office, the Health Department, the Baltimore Police Department, Baltimore City Public Schools, the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, the Baltimore City Office of Equity and Civil Rights, the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office, the Baltimore City Department of Social Services, the Maryland Department of Health, Behavioral Health System of Baltimore, and other relevant stakeholders to update the council on services provided to the general well-being of the transgender community in Baltimore City. For this hearing, we're going to start with brief opening remarks from Councilman Burnett, the resolution sponsor. We're also going to hear from Aya Damons immediately following Councilmember Burnett. She is the founder and the executive director of Baltimore Safe Haven. Then we will hear reports from the agencies and give committee members the opportunity to ask any questions. After that, we will move on to public testimony. I want to thank Councilmember Burnett for introducing this crucial topic and elevating the conversation on the state of our transgender community. We know that trans people are one of our most vulnerable demographics. They are more likely to deal with homelessness, violence, isolation, and hate than the majority of their counterparts. And in 2021, our country has already seen over 46 members of the trans community die by fatal violence. Their stories often go untold due to continuing stigmas and a lack of media attention. Black trans women are disproportionately impacted by this violence. Our transgender community has been systemically been invisible. And it is our job as a city council to give a voice to the voiceless. This week is Transgender Awareness Week, and it is important that we have this dialogue to evaluate what the city's current initiatives are and come up with innovative solutions to protect and serve our trans residents and all who visit our city. At this time, we're going to hear from Councilman Burnett. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and colleagues, and thank you for elevating those issues. Well said. So I'll keep my remarks short because I do want to make sure we have plenty of time for testimony and to hear from Aya and others about the challenges that they're facing here in Baltimore City and across the country. I do want to thank all of their hard work in providing shelter, providing housing, and much of which we're going to hear about today, the amazing work that's being done by Safe Haven and other organizations. And I would agree with the chair that much more work absolutely needs to be done by this body, by the mayor's office, and by the state of Maryland to better protect our trans community here in Baltimore and across the state. As you've highlighted, the threat of violence, housing insecurity, job instability, et cetera, are the daily experiences of folks in the trans community, and we have to do more. And so we need to continue this dialogue along the way. And finally, do want to lift up that this body did establish the first ever office of the LGBTQ community, but we absolutely also need to advocate to make sure that it's fully funded, fully staffed, and providing all the needed support so that it's not just an office in name, but it is productive in its work. So with that, I'm going to stand back and hand it over to Aya, who may need to be elevated. I saw her on the attendees list. So if we could elevate Aya. Oh, looks like she's already up there. Perfect. All right. So I'm going to hand it over to Aya to share some opening remarks as well.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to beg for you all's help for Baltimore City when it comes to my siblings that are trans here in Baltimore City. We need your help. We need your support. Today, as my siblings, we're dying at an alarming rate. Baltimore, we come in at number 4 as cities that has the highest rates of murders, lack of resources and education, and direct funding programs for trans people who look like me. Again, I'm here begging for your support. I'm going to make it short and simple this time and not so hard. My staff is here. They will follow up behind me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Aya Damons, again, a champion with the Baltimore Safe Haven. At this time, we're going to move on to agency reports. We're going to start with the Office of the Mayor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Scott Davis, Director of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhoods, testifying on behalf of the Mayor's Office. Thank you again, Madam Chair and honorable members of the committee for having this opportunity. First, I want to thank the great work and the really important work that Aya, Baltimore Safe Haven, and many other advocates and community leaders have been doing here in Baltimore City. We know that the COVID pandemic has impacted everyone in our city. And as you mentioned, Madam Chair, our trans community is a community that has been disproportionately impacted by many issues in our city. And the COVID pandemic has just exacerbated that. On the mayor's side, we are supportive of this resolution and bringing forth and the voices and sharing the information. We know that we need to provide more support in addition to the great efforts and the actions that the city is doing. My colleague in the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services will speak to some of the funding that has been provided. I do want to speak to Councilman Burnett's point around the creation of the Baltimore City Office of LGBTQ Affairs, which was signed into law by the mayor in June of this year. I'm happy to report that we are currently going through interviews for the director's position for that office, and the goal pending that all HR processes go well, is to have that position staffed by the beginning of the year. So we've had some really great candidates, and we are going through interviews actually this week. And one of the things that I have impressed upon the candidates as we've interviewed with them, and one of the things that I know is going to be a priority, I'm working with Deputy Mayor Faith Leach, the Deputy Mayor of Equity, Health, and Human Services, who will oversee the Office of LGBTQ Affairs, is that really the trans community needs to be focused, and our work needs to really work and look at how we can improve the overall health and well-being of the community in the city. So that concludes my report. Thank you again, Madam Chair, for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Director. We're going to move on to the Office of Equity and Civil Rights at this time. For the Mayor's Office, is there anyone here to stand by, report, or speak on behalf of the Office of Equity and Civil Rights?
Madam Chair, I just got a text from Kalen Young. He needs to be elevated.
Okay, we'll take care of that now. Okay, Mr. Young, it looks like you're elevated.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kaden Young. I'm the Deputy Director of the Office of Equity and Civil Rights. Please excuse the background noise. I have a 2-year-old that I am babysitting at the same time. I don't know how parents do this work from home thing. It is crazy. But as you know, the Office of Equity and Civil Rights deals with discrimination, particularly with our CRC, the Community Relations Commission, but then also with the CRB. And so through those avenues, we are tasked with making sure that those individuals who are discriminated against, to include those individuals discriminated against as a result of gender identity, have recourse. We investigate those complaints, and we also try to seek remedy for those individuals. Indeed, also through the Equity Office, which is also housed in the Office of Equity and Civil Rights, we're also tasked with working with city agencies and city government to ensure that we are being responsive as it pertains to folks' various uniqueness and as it pertains to gender identity, as it pertains to race, and all the other criteria that we look at, and that's defined under the equity ordinance that was passed in 2018. So happy to take any questions. As you know, as I said, I've got a lot going on, so if you don't mind, I'm going to just pause right there.
Thank you, Mr. Young. We're going to move on to the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman and Council. My name is Bill Wells. I'm the Deputy Director of the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services. I use he, him pronouns. We submitted a report. We stand by that report. MOHS sees this issue very favorably in terms of the intent of the committee and the city. Wanted to, instead of just reading through the report, take a few moments to highlight some of the things that MOHS is doing, either internally or through our external funding. I think the first thing to highlight is that we do support directly through our Youth Homelessness Demonstration Project funds, the YHDP program, funding for Baltimore Safe Haven. And so that's one accomplishment in this past year that we're very proud of. We would hope that other funds could be used to fund similar organizations and interventions. As some of you may know, MOHS works primarily through providing pass-through funding from federal and state programs to specific homeless populations, trying ultimately to move folks through to permanent housing. Many of these programs specifically identify groups that are at heightened risk. And there's been a lot of movement in the federal government very recently to put a particular emphasis on LGBTQ and specifically transgender efforts. In addition, so that's outwardly, we know from our point in time count in the last time it was conducted in 2020 that there were a small percentage of individuals counted who identified as being transgender. This is a self-report, so clients and respondents are allowed to represent themselves the way that they choose to. That's the best hard information that we have. And so we would assume that when we look at all of the services that we provide, that those services are also provided to LGBTQ, and in this case, particularly for this hearing, transgender community members. And then we also wanted to highlight that our outreach team has a specific staff person who has additional training above and beyond the training that all of our staff have and that we ask that all of our shelter providers have, because she is identified specifically as a LGBTQ specialist, not only to engage with clients who are looking for someone who is specifically trained, but also to help bolster the training and interactions, meeting people where they are, through our outreach and other efforts in the city. So those are the highlights that I wanted to talk about from MOHS. We certainly would be happy to answer any specific questions or reiterate anything that you would like me to dive into deeper from our report.
Okay, thank you, Bill. For Representing Office of Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, and also for your report. We are going to move on to our health department. Excuse me, I'm out of order. We're going to move on to the Mayor's Office of Employment Development at this time. Natasha, is there anyone here from MOED?
All right, I'm looking through to see if they need to be elevated.
Okay, looks like we have you elevated.
Hello, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the council. My name is Mackenzie Garvin, and I am the Deputy Director of the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. We have provided some written testimony, but I wanted to highlight some elements of our written report and also elevate some of the opportunities that are available right now for community organizations. Before we get started, I just wanted to share my screen very quickly if possible. Is that possible?
Yes, Mackenzie, we're going to allow you to share your screen. Just try to keep your information brief.
Sure. I just wanted to put this statement on the screen. For background, for anyone who is listening on the call, we are the city's public workforce development agency, but to MOE, is it sharing? Okay. Oops. Let's see. Sorry about this.
It's okay.
Yep. We are the city's public workforce development agency, ostensibly speaking, but to MOED, we believe that we are a mission-driven organization, and our mission at MOED is to deliver economic justice to Baltimore City residents. We've always been engaged in this type of work, but last year, as an agency, as a team, we made an explicit statement that we hold ourselves accountable to, and we want to make sure that all of our work leads back to, and I want to just read that statement very quickly. And it's on the screen. To MOED, economic justice means creating an equitable workforce system that responds to all residents' needs and provides viable economic opportunities to all residents, especially those who have been generationally and systemically disadvantaged. We believe that every resident deserves the opportunity for meaningful work and a hopeful future. And we know this embodies our transgender community. We also know that we can do more and we want to do more. At the last hearing that we had last year, I provided written testimony, but for some reason, MOED did not provide a verbal testimony. But after that hearing, I reached out to one of the presenters, and we had a meeting with a presenter and also some of the community that's on the call now to introduce ourselves. Our Director of Employer Services was on that meeting, and our Director of Workforce Operations, to talk about what we do at MOED, what services we have available, and how the community can also access our services. And we want to continue that conversation. We also recognize that there were more efforts we needed to take in terms of our own cultural competency at MOED. Subsequent to that meeting, we had a training with the former liaison, Jabari Lyles, with our leadership team. We can and are committed to doing more trainings. We also attended the training by DHR this year. We also had a representative from Joy Baltimore, who was a part of our weekly employer services digital program, talk about ways for businesses to work with the LGBT community. And we also provided information through our very robust Now Hiring newsletter that provides information about all of the services we have, all of the jobs that we have available, all of the programs that we have available. I know that Scott Davis is on that list, and also others who were a part of that call are on that list. If anyone is not included on that list, we can also provide that information. Moving into some opportunities that we have available. The mayor yesterday made an announcement for a historic investment in workforce development, $30 million. There's opportunity for training. We have jobs available right now. But I think a true opportunity is that we are expanding our community job hub network. And that means that individual organizations can apply to have a member of MOED staff to work within the organization. They will sit at the organization, they can help do job search, they can help register individuals for MWE, hold recruitment, but be connected back with MOED and also within the workforce system. Of course, organizations that apply to this, they need to meet certain criteria, but if they do not meet that criteria, we are also building out a team of mobile workforce development staff. They will literally be in cars. They will be driving to location. They can be on location for hours. They can be on location for days, but individual organizations will be able to have access to these services. So I'm really advocating that anyone on this call take advantage of those opportunities that we have coming our way. That being said, I also want to say and reiterate again, we can and we are willing to do more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garvin. Thanks for the agency's report. Thank you for the slide that you shared and the additional information, resources speaking about the huge announcement that came yesterday regarding workforce development as well. We just appreciate you being here. So the next agency that we are going to hear from at this time, and what I'm asking of our remaining agencies is if you can be brief. I do apologize, but we are on a time constraint. I want to make sure that any questions that come through the chat, that a council member is able to ask them if they do so wish, as well as make sure that we can get to public testimony so we can hear from the community as well. So if you can keep it brief, note some highlights, and let us know where you stand on your report or if you stand by it. We have the health department up next.
Thank you very much. So hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Eastman, Deputy Chief of Staff at the Baltimore City Health Department. I will be presenting on the behalf of the agency today. I will provide some brief remarks. I will keep them brief, but I do have 2 resource slides at the end. I would like to share if I could possibly get sharing ability, but I'll run through my comments while you do that. So I want to thank you for introducing this resolution and allowing us to be a part of this important hearing. The health department is a strong proponent of inclusivity and directly addressing health disparities. We want to make sure that we're addressing the needs of all city residents, including the transgender community. We know that transgender people in the city, as well as across the country, experience discrimination, greater discrimination in their day-to-day interactions and in accessing healthcare than the public at large. They experience stigma, trauma, and discrimination, which contributes to health risk and poor health outcomes, a couple of those being greater use of drugs and alcohol and higher rates of HIV. So the health department has engaged in efforts in advocacy, collaboration with funding and partners in our direct service delivery to help address the needs of our transgender residents. I'm just going to talk about a few of those now, but would refer you to the report for some additional ones. One thing we do, we strive to have our community engagement groups inclusive of transgender people. This includes our main stakeholder group for HIV prevention, which provides direct guidance to us on the effectiveness of our programs, our use of federal funds, and more. We collaborate and provide funding for things like HIV, STI prevention, opioid use disorder, and care coordination to organizations who directly work with transgender individuals. And understanding the importance of gender affirming care, we work with our Ryan White subrecipients to help connect them with other subrecipients to help train them in gender affirming care and the issues of critical importance in transgender care. This program also offers emergency financial assistance and medical transportation as we recognize the role that these services play in care. Our own staff in our sexual health and wellness clinics have been trained on conducting medically appropriate and culturally sensitive STI training with transgender people as well, excuse me. And just to conclude, I am going to pull up my slides really quickly. Let's see if I can see if it's the right one. Is the slide up? Yes, okay, wonderful, thank you. So try to make this a little bigger. So just want to run through this really quick. We have storytelling events, Baltimore in Conversation, which aims to provide spaces for transgender individuals and their allies to tell stories. This can be found at baltimoreinconversation.com. And these include Project Presence, which was a photo exhibit that included the transgender community, which you can also find on that website. Our media campaign, People Who Look Like Me. And we also have a new newsletter called Hugs, which has resources for those identifying as LGBTQ. And please also follow us, Baltimore Conversation, on Facebook as well. We also have a free condom distribution program open to everyone, which you can find at endhivbaltimore.com/free stuff. If you're interested in our harm reduction or overdose prevention resources like Narcan or our syringe exchange services, you can find those at dote. We have many services for the youth population, which you can learn more about by contacting Mark Mason, mark.mason@baltimorecity.gov. And some of those include, so these are for young people who have been a victim of crime through our Youth Services Advocacy Program. And this is really wraparound services for things like housing, transportation, connection with mental health services, employment, education, and substance use care. Just two more. We have a free online resource guide to connect people with things like similar food, housing, transportation, utilities, et cetera, at charmcare.org. And then our general website, health.baltimorecity.gov for general information on our services. And I just want to thank you again. We are happy to offer our support for this resolution and hope it sees a favorable report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. We are moving immediately to the police department.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Michelle Wurtzberger. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Baltimore Police Department. I am joined by a number of folks from our team. We have Lieutenant Colonel Monique Brown. We have Bill Joyner, who is our Director of Equity and Inclusion. Hold on one second, I'm having technical issues there. We also have Sergeant Kevin Bailey, who is our LGBTQ liaison, and Major Derek Loeffler, who is in charge of our academy. I do have slides. In the interest of time, I won't put them up. I will send them to the committee, ma'am. But I'm going to turn the talk over to Director Joyner, who is going to lead our presentation.
And good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Good afternoon, Director Joyner. I'm just want to remind you, if you can just be brief and just hit some key highlights. I want to make sure that we're able to uplift some voices, get some questions answered that the community wants to know. Thank you, sir.
Yes, I'll be less than 5 minutes. So my name is Bill Joyner, he, him, his, and I direct the BPD's Equity Office. As Michelle mentioned in our bill report, we know that we don't have a respectable record or a healthy relationship with the trans community in Baltimore because we haven't yet proven to be a trustworthy and reliable partner. But we are working really hard to change that and working with trans residents of Baltimore whenever and wherever possible in the development or revision of policies, trainings, and practices here at BPD. In addition to the Police Commissioner's own LGBTQ+ Advisory Council, we've been seeking the advice and perspectives of the Mayor's LGBTQ Commission, Free State Justice, and individual queer Baltimoreans who have ideas but are not formally affiliated with any major advocacy organizations. We greatly appreciate their willingness to work with us in a collaborative way, even when it is often confrontational, because we know why so many trans people in Baltimore are unwilling to work with us and decline our requests to engage, again, because we have not yet proven a record of reliability and trustworthiness. But one of the results of this cooperation that is ongoing and happening now is that several queer Baltimoreans, including trans people, were included in or involved in the development and implementation of our new community policing training, which was taught to all police officers. And importantly, one of the co-facilitators of that section of the training that teaches officers about the history of oppression and discrimination in policing, including here in Baltimore, was a Black trans woman. It's the first time I'm aware of that we as a department have so concretely acknowledged and valued the expertise inherent and a person's analysis of her own lived experience as a member of a marginalized community. It's our hope that continued collaboration will help us replicate and scale up that type of representation and inclusion. One example of policy improvements is Policy 720, Interactions with LGBTQ individuals. It outlines several protections that are explicitly targeted to benefit trans people. This policy was put into effect earlier this year after LGBTQ plus specific content was included in our stops, searches, and arrests training. Highlights of our policy include a requirement for officers to use the names and pronouns of individuals as provided and clarified by the person, not the officer's perception or even the individual's government ID. Indeed, individuals are not required to provide any proof of gender identity. Officers are prohibited from discrimination based on actual or perceived gender identity, expression, or sexual orientation, and also prohibited from conducting a search or pat-down in order to touch, view, or evaluate a person's anatomy. Identity-related items like prosthetics and chest binders shall not be removed unless required for a legitimate law enforcement purpose, and that removal must be consistent with requirements for removing items like wigs from cisgender persons. And our last highlight is a crucial one that we are actually still working with organizations to refine. Information about a person's transgender status should only be documented when it is relevant and necessary to an investigation or law enforcement actions. So right now, by default, a person's gender identity information is only acquired and documented if they are involved in an incident that is motivated by a bias based on a person's actual or perceived gender identity. Those are the terms. That interpretation of this provision limits the department's access to information about a person's gender identity to the narrowest audience and under the narrowest circumstances. It protects the privacy of the individual. That assumption is widely accepted as a fact in government at the local, state, and national levels. But we are not convinced that assumption is correct, and that acting on that assumption is in the best interest of trans people. We know that national data suggests that trans people, especially trans women and trans people of color, are at higher risk of being victims of crime, including violent crime. And our partners here in Baltimore have also told us that they generally want more data and better data about perceived disproportionate treatment of trans people, including by BPD, and the disproportionate risks of harm and victimization in Baltimore generally. BPD is best positioned to collect that kind of information, that kind of data, in the same way we do for race, sex, and ethnic minorities, to evaluate disparities and monitor progress. Our partners have told us that we need to figure out how the data is aggregated, how it is internally managed, accessed, and reported, and how it is communicated to the community, all with the needs and interests of trans people as the top priority. And because queer communities, including trans communities, are not monolithic.
Mr. Joyner, I definitely thank you for all of this information. I thank you guys for the report. Can you close out at this time?
Yep, that was the last thing. So we're working with community partners, the DOJ, and the monitoring team to figure out potential solutions to this issue. It's an ongoing priority, and we would love to work with anyone here who is interested in joining that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you to our folks at the Baltimore Police Department. I see everyone here, and I appreciate you for being here. For the State's Attorney's Office, you have submitted a report. Do you stand by your report at this time?
Yes.
Thank you. For the Baltimore City Public School System, you have submitted a report. Do you stand by your report at this time?
Yes, this is Josh Simmons, Chief Legal Officer. We do.
Thank you. For the city solicitor, a report has been submitted. Do you stand by your report at this time?
Madam Chair, we stand by our report.
Okay, great. So this is what we're going to do. I have a question in the chat. The question says, are questions only for certain people to ask questions? I've been at this point before where I was new to watching city council hearings. I understand that there are a few folks on here who this may be their first time. So I just want to give you this information. Questions may only be asked by committee members or council members. However, if you put any of your questions within the chat, we are going to do our best as the HEC committee to pull your questions and get them answered, because we fully understand that this hearing is about you and information that the community wants to know. I'm going to move directly into questions briefly that I see. I'm not going to ask any questions that I have at this time. I'm pulling them directly from the chat. Then we're going to move into public testimony. If we have additional time, we're going to come back to the questions. So this is a little different than how we typically run it. We had Janae within the chat who is asking about housing opportunities. Janae wants to know what resources does the city offer for transgender people, for the LGBTQ plus community facing housing insecurity due to discrimination or other issues. Who can answer any questions regarding housing specifically for this community?
This is Bill Wells, Deputy Director at MOHS. Him. Our housing efforts are specifically related to ending homelessness. So I can speak narrowly to that aspect of housing. We don't offer any programs, we don't fund any programs specifically targeted only for LGBTQ individuals at this time.
Okay, am I able to respond to that? Are we, is there
I'm sorry,
housing opportunities for those?
who's speaking at this time? Is that Aya?
No, actually, she is the operations director for Baltimore Safe Haven. Her name is Janae Tyler.
Okay, Ms. Tyler, go ahead at this time if you have a comment. If you have a specific question, I just need you to put it within the chat.
Okay.
Another question that came through was regarding workforce development. And it says, what does workforce development and education opportunities look like? I know, Ms. Garvin, that you briefly spoke on it, but they want to know, is there any opportunity for collaboration? I think you mentioned something about community organizations. Can you just give us a little bit more information about that?
Yeah, so this was announced a couple of weeks ago as a part of our ARPA strategy through the state. We have something called community job hubs that already exist within MOED. We are expanding those now, and we're also taking applications for those. As I stated earlier, there are some requirements in terms of the number of traffic that's coming through a particular organization or computer bandwidth, et cetera. However, it is an opportunity to have an MOED staff person that is regularly placed at your organization, and that person can connect back with workforce development at MOED locations and also within the workforce system. And that person could be there and available to help an individual with job search, help an individual get connected to training opportunities, help an individual to connect to services to eliminate barriers, to connect them with work, register them with MWE, do recruitments, et cetera. So that's the opportunity. That's one opportunity. The other opportunity is we are creating a mobile workforce development team. They will be available to go out to community-based organizations that, even if they are not hubs, and be there for a certain amount of hours, a certain amount of days to do the same thing. The idea is we have a lot of information and a lot of exciting initiatives that come out of MOED, and we work with a lot of organizations. And even when it's widely publicized, there are some organizations that miss it. And it's when we physically go out and we are in locations with your customers, they're also our customers, we're able to create that connection, and we want to do that. And so those are the opportunities that are available right now. We also have Higher Up. It's a transitional jobs program. Individuals are being placed right now at city organizations or city agencies for 13 weeks of transitional employment, and we're also helping them to transition into permanent employment. That is available right now as well. And as I said yesterday, the mayor announced the $30 million ARPA strategy, and we are expanding Higher Up to 6-month jobs that are available. Thank you.
Ms. Garvin, can you just, if you already said it, can you just throw it out there again? How do folks connect with MOED directly? Is there a website? Is there a telephone number? Are you guys on social media? If you can just uplift or just provide just how people can connect with you guys.
Sure, I would follow all of our socials. So follow our Twitter, follow MOED's Facebook page. It's very robust. We have a regular Wednesday show that's at 1 o'clock where we have different organizations come on. We have different recruitment activities there. We also on our website have an assistance request form. Anyone can fill that out directly. Someone from MOED will contact you if you need assistance. We have a very robust job board. It has several hundred jobs. It's different than other job boards that you'll see out there because if you click on a job, there will be an MOED staff that is connected to that job. It's not like Indeed where it could go off into the atmosphere. Someone from MOED will see that you have applied. You can apply on your own, or if you need support, it's there. Everything is on our website, and that is how you can connect in with our centers. I also want to note that our centers are fully open to the public again, normal hours. You don't have to sign up. You can just come and physically visit our center in Northwest at Mandamon, on the east side on Madison Street, or the Employment Connection Center on Bush Street.
Do you all have a telephone number for people to get in contact with you that you know offhand?
We do. I can put it into the chat. Bear with me 1 second.
Okay, we're going to move on to Councilman Burnett. He is the sponsor of the bill. Did you have any specific questions that you know needed to be asked at this time, sir?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. And one of them was already asked. So the others I'm going to direct to Kaylin Young from the Office of Equity. He mentioned in his presentation the role of the Civilian Review Board. So just a two-part question. Kaylin, could you just speak, I know we're crunched on time, briefly how people can engage with the Civilian Review Board, what it does. One of the issues that we know is in conversations that I've had with folks in the trans community is issues with harassment and incarceration by the police department, other sexual assault, violence. It's been a lot, all of it's documented in the consent decree report. Can you talk about how people can file complaints, what that process is? And then the second piece is the office able to or considering providing, I guess, community-based training, know your rights workshops for anybody that wants that kind of information, so that we can better prepare people on what their rights are and how to navigate the system.
Well, thank you for the question, Councilman. First, anyone can go to civilrights.baltimorecity.gov and you can fill out a form that would allow you to submit a complaint to the Civilian Review Board. The Civilian Review Board is limited to 5 pieces of jurisdiction. Those include harassment. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but it's all listed right on the website. Now, I want to also hedge though quickly that with the passage of HB 670 on the state level last session, there's going to be some changes as it pertains to the Civilian Review Board and the powers that they have and the entire police disciplinary structure. So those who are watching this should be mindful of those changes and continuing to stay in touch with their legislators to see how that progresses. As it pertains to your second question, though, with regard to training, I'm not familiar with any trainings that we do today. And we are in transition with some personnel in our equity office, so there won't be any trainings immediately available. However, I do think that's something that we would like to put on our portfolio. In the meantime, though, individuals watching can reach out to the ACLU of Maryland, who does know your rights trainings, and they also could be assisting for those who want to file complaints as well, as they have a non-voting seat on the CRB as well. So I hope those answered your questions, and I'm happy to provide any further clarity offline.
Councilman, can I add a little bit more information as well? I will, at the conclusion of the hearing, I will send to the committee, there's 3 different ways that individuals can file complaints against officers with our Public Integrity Bureau. So I will send that to the committee, and you are welcome to share that with your constituents or on social media. In fact, we welcome that. Another point I wanted to make was under the consent decree and in coordination now with the new state law, we have been working to tweak our misconduct process from intake to investigation to final outcome. The consent decree team is in the process of organizing a training session, just like you had kind of mentioned, on that intake process, which I believe will be December 7th, and it will be virtual. Once I have that information, I will send it to the committee as well. You can participate, as can your constituents. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Councilman, really quickly, those 5 jurisdictions for the CRB are excessive force, abusive language, harassment, false arrest, and false imprisonment. Everything else should go to the police department.
Thank you. That's helpful. Madam Chair, I did have actually one more question for Mr. Wells. In your presentation, you mentioned that while there may not be specific programs for the LGBTQ community in Baltimore, that there were federal dollars and sort of a federal emphasis in this area. Can you elaborate briefly on what that is and what the future looks like and how organizations like Safe Haven and others can access those dollars when they become available?
Certainly, and the specific, I guess, changes recently revolve around our HOPWA program, Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS. Baltimore acts as sort of the regional funnel for those funds. So we oversee the individual, the funding for the HOPWA programs, which are housing and other services for persons with AIDS in Baltimore County. I'm going to forget all of them. Baltimore County, Howard County, Anne Arundel County, 5 jurisdictions, Carroll County, and Queen Anne's County, right around Baltimore, as well as operating the ones in Baltimore City. One thing that the HOPWA office at HUD is doing is starting a program on racial, gender, and LGBTQ plus equity. And it's just starting, but we plan to participate in that. It's centered on folks with lived expertise and ways to not only train staff, but also to get input onto how the HOPWA program operates. So that was the biggest change recently. We are looking for changes that come on the HUD website where they offer training to local jurisdictions, and we expect to see trainings there as well. And so I may have miscommunicated earlier. I don't know of any specific allocations coming from HUD that would target LGBTQ communities and homelessness outside of the grants that are already available.
And just a quick follow-up, can you put links to how organizations can access those grants or descriptions, timelines, that kind of thing? Can you put that in the chat and provide it to the committee?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. This may be for the mayor's office. I have Nicole at Baltimore Safe Haven who had a question around what services does the city provide for the trans community that are over the age of 24. We've heard a lot from Moet about workforce development. We've heard a decent amount from our mayor's office of homeless services regarding someone maybe going through housing insecurity. But Scott, are there additional services specifically likely for the ages over 24 from the city?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The key services I think really have been shared by MOED and MOHS around housing insecurity and homelessness, and also workforce development. And then also, as was mentioned in the previous hearing that was held this morning, the health department does have outreach that supports individuals with needle exchange, with condoms, with things of that nature, those that may be engaged in survival sex work. So at this time, those are the key services. As I mentioned in my report, one of the key things that the new director will be focused on is outlining all of these services that exist and looking for the gaps and where we need to create or tailor existing services.
As a follow-up to that, does the mayor's office, I know that we have a posting or a new director is coming in. Is there any timeline? Typically, people have measurements when they come in. They may have 90-day plans. They may have 6-month plans. They may have 5-year long-term plans. Does the mayor's office have specific measurable plans right now that they want to see from this new director?
Yes, so Madam Chair, we have some plans that were put together by the LGBTQ Commission. So one of the things that will be a key framework for the new director. We also want the director to be able to outline some of their priorities as well. When that person starts, that will be something that we will share out, and also will have those priorities that will align with the mayor's larger priorities across the city. So absolutely.
I have a question. It's specifically to likely the police department, the state's attorney's department. I want to know, how do the police department and the state's attorney's office work with our transgender community, folks within a community who are victims of crime, to develop trust necessary to effectively investigate and prosecute any of those crimes? And are the police and prosecutors equipped with the training and information to connect transgender people to other services and resources that they may need?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes, hello, Madam Chair. My name is Merrick Moses, and I'm the LGBTQ liaison for the Office of the State's Attorney for Baltimore City. And we have an excellent relationship, particularly with the Baltimore Police Department's LGBTQ liaison, Sergeant Kevin Bailey. We've been able to find emergency housing for victims. We also do a partnership where people will tell me about folks who have experienced violence but are afraid to make a police report. So we will specifically reach out to Sergeant Bailey to help them make a police report, because many persons, particularly transgender persons and non-binary persons, are very, very squeamish and scared to actually talk to the police about crimes committed against them. And so we've been able to with that relationship. We've also been able to do safety workshops for LGBTQ seniors through Chase Braxton, and we also held with the police department an LGBTQ victims of violence town hall, I believe, in 2017. So we continue to build on that relationship and make sure that LGBTQ victims of crime specifically know that there are resources out there in which they can be protected from predators.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry.
No, I just want to say thanks, Merrick. I was going to see if the police department had something to add, so I'm here for you, Michelle.
Yes, ma'am. So I just wanted to say thank you to Brother Moses for mentioning the work that he's doing with Sergeant Bailey. And I'm going to let Sergeant Bailey kind of talk about some of the stuff he's working on. And then if we could just, after that, just for a moment, pivot to Major Loeffler to talk a little bit about the training, because that was a part of your question as well. Thank you. Go ahead, Sergeant Bailey.
With the community members such as Aya that runs Safe Haven has reached out in the past about things, and I do try to connect with victims that have reported crime or have not reported crime. I get a
Looks like we're having some tech issues. If you wanted to lead with Major Loeffler at this time until we work that out.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Major?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yep. So we do, currently right now, we have our fair and impartial policing that's taking place. It's a new 2-day training. Well, the first day, an 8-hour course, is dedicated to fair and impartial policing. We started that training course in mid-September. All sworn personnel will be going through that by early to mid-January. We should have completed all of that. In that fair and impartial policing, we do focus on the LGBTQ community and make sure that we train to equity and diversity and how that is covered in that area. Also in our entry level training, we have a block of instruction in that area as well. Sergeant Bailey actually does a lot of the training for us in for that specific block of instruction. That's in our behavioral health model. It's a 3-day block of instruction that we provide all recruits. And then also the our CIT training as well. There's our 40-hour block of instruction that was recently revamped through the monitoring team and consent decree process, that we have the new 40-hour training course that started in August for all of those that will be CIT trained officers. We have a block of instruction in that area as well. And Sergeant Bailey could probably provide a little more in-depth on how the training is covered and answer the questions that were presented.
It looks like Sergeant Bailey tried to move to a new location to see. Let's see if that works.
Yeah, I hope everyone can hear me. We're having internet issues in the building, so I had to walk outside to get a better signal. So good morning, everyone. So yes, as Merrick was saying from the state's attorney's office, yes, we do. I get a copy of reports. I get a list of the reports that come in that affect LGBTQ members that were identified in those reports for whatever the reasons are of the crime. And I also get a list of hate crime reports. And I follow up with those victims. And I also follow up with if there's a detective on the case or anything like that to make sure that the victims understand what took place while the officers were there, make sure they have an understanding of their next steps. But I also send that information to the state's attorney's office, usually through Merrick, to see what our next steps could be to help the victim in moving forward. And like he said, some of the stuff sometimes isn't reported, and it's things that are passed along through the community. And when I get that information, we do our best to reach out to find someone that knows that person that a crime may have occurred to, and then get them to report that crime. As far as training goes, our training has been over the last few years growing and very more robust in how we incorporate LGBTQ community in all facets of training. So it's not just happening in one training session, it's happening throughout all our trainings. We incorporate the community and in those training through scenarios and through teaching moments where our officers are better able to understand how they can affect the community throughout the trainings. And with our CIT training in particular, dealing with mental health, we do have an instructor that comes in from Hearts and Ears and talks about mental health and their own experiences being a member of the transgender community. And they're able to get that firsthand knowledge from the people from the community. I think that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Major Lawful, as well. I want to move to see if there are any other council members who had any additional questions, any other committee members who had any additional questions right now. I'm unable to see the raise hand function because I have the chat and the Q&A up right now. But if you have any questions, please just turn your video on and signal to me. Councilmember Burnett, did you have any additional questions at this time?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, I actually did. We invited the school system here. I just want to ask them just a few questions. The first question is regarding gender neutral facilities. I want to know if we're currently offering gender neutral facilities for our students.
Our policy that was referred to in our testimony, policy JBB, talks about and affirms the right of students to go to the facility, the gender segregated facility, including bathrooms, consistent with their gender identity. So that's one part of it. In addition, I understand you're asking about facilities that are not designated as specifically male or female gender neutral facilities. And we highlighted in the report that we recently presented to the Board of School Commissioners that we are installing gender neutral facilities in all of our 21st century projects, which are approximately 28 schools. We are working on additional renovations and some of the programs that have gotten capital function funding, and we are actively looking for opportunities as we do renovations to increase the options for gender neutral facilities as well.
Thank you. For the record, if I didn't catch it, so if you can just state your first and last name again, just so we have it for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry, Josh Sivan. I'm the Chief Legal Officer for Baltimore City Schools, him, his pronouns.
Like I'm on mute now. Thank you. The other item that I wanted to know is how is the school system what is the school system proactively doing just to prevent bullying of transgender students, and what resources are available for our transgender students who are experiencing bullying?
It's a really good question, and thank you for the opportunity to engage on it. We are, as we detailed more specifically in our testimony and our presentation recently to the board, we have a comprehensive initiative with several work streams, one of which is our wholeness work. And in that, we are really focused on bullying. In addition, I think we highlighted we are doing proactive work on bullying generally, and then we're making sure that we specifically incorporate into that both training and support for our staff, and then also resources for our students, both in our curriculum and then also in other opportunities. Last month was Bullying Prevention Month, and we had a series of activities that were rolled out in schools. We are also rolling out a support protocol for LGBTQ students that we have developed, building off of models and other districts, as well as feedback from stakeholders. And it's a protocol. We link to it in the presentation that allows staff to work proactively with students who identify as transgender or otherwise LGBTQ to make sure that we have safe and supportive environments, and we do that proactively. And then finally, I just wanted to stress, and we detail this in more detail in our testimony, that we now have approximately 40 gender sexuality alliances in our schools that are student-led groups, and we are working with those groups. We're conducting a listening sessions with those groups to make sure that we have student voices as part of our work. So we're really meeting students where they are and taking their own feedback about how we ensure safe and secure places for our students.
Thank you. We're going to go into just closing questions. Councilman Torrance has a few questions, and after those questions, we're going to move directly into public testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is actually for behavioral health systems in the health department. One of the things, as well as the mayor's office on this, how do we do coordinated healthcare access? Because one of the things I have is we've dealt with my office connecting a trans constituent to healthcare resources that support their transition, but also making sure that they can stay active and enrolled in the current public systems that we do have.
So I'm not entirely clear on the question. Is this for individuals who are currently in services through funded providers at MOHS?
Sorry. Sorry, I have a little one. So one of my questions is, and this is one of the things that we struggle even in my office with navigating, for persons who are not connected to these resources or the limited resources that we currently have. Do we have any public campaign or coordination that we do in terms of getting persons enrolled in healthcare services? Often a number of persons who are transgender who may not come through our coordinated entry may have healthcare needs that we may not rise to our attention.
Okay, so the coordinated entry system is a requirement for moving individuals through to the care and housing that they need. So, you know, because of the rules that we operate under from HUD, as the manager of the HMIS system for Baltimore, that's a requirement for getting through to services. But we would actively work with the service providers, with the funded providers, to connect individuals to whatever resources are required to stabilize and improve their lives. So I'm not sure that I have a specific response about how we would connect to a specific healthcare need, but that's part of the assessment with any service provider, looking at an individual. What resources do they have? What resources do they lack? And what resources can they be connected to? And so that would include any healthcare resources and would take into account the specific needs of an individual who is transgender, or however they would define their needs.
And I could just add from the health department if that. I would recommend we have an free online resource guide, charmcare.org, for people that can use to search for free or reduced cost programs and services in the city. It's a directory for information on resources like food, housing, transportation, utilities, employment, education, mental health, and substance use care. I can put that link in the chat box. And then I would also recommend, I don't think Adrian's with us here from BHSB anymore, but the Here to Help hotline, which is for people looking to connect with mental health services. And that I can post the number to that, but that is 410-433-5175. And if you can always, of course, reach out to us if there's anything more specific that you'd like to discuss. Thank you.
That's my only question, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move into public testimony. I want to thank members of the public for your patience. And Matt, you can take over whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the public, you'll have 2 minutes each to provide your testimony. For those who signed in using a computer, please use the raise hand function to indicate that you wish to testify. If you can't find the raise hand function, you can also send a chat. Make sure you get your chance to speak. We'll start with the computer users and then move on to anyone who has called in. Attendees who called in cannot be identified by name and do not have a raise hand button, and so you'll be unmuted one by one. You'll hear 2 beeps when you're unmuted, and if a caller does not want to provide testimony, they can simply say they do not wish to testify. And for everyone who is testifying, please start by stating your name at the beginning of your testimony. And moving on, first we have VM Millhouse. Okay. No response. That may be from the last hearing. Next we have Ken Jaretsu.
Hi, yes. My name is Ken Jaretsu, pronouns he and him. I'm the executive director of Hearts and Ears. We are the only LGBT wellness and recovery center in the state of Maryland that is trans-run, peer-run and trans-led. Just wanted to kind of put it out there about the services we provide. We provide mental health services as well as services for folks who are dealing with substance use recovery. We've been around for about 20 years. I'm not sure if a lot of people have heard of us, so I just wanted to let folks know that we're in the community. I'm also the individual that Sergeant Bailey spoke of that is doing the current LGBT training for the CIT officers in the Baltimore City Police Department.
Ken, what's the name of the group again?
The organization is Hearts and Ears, Inc. We're located in Mount Vernon at 611 Park Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Shane Couch-Murray.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shane Couch-Murray. I use he, him pronouns. I am a social worker at the Office of the Public Defender here in Baltimore City. I wanted to bring light to the fact that LGBTQ individuals in jails and prisons around Maryland need protections and not isolation. So I don't know if many of you know that, like, if someone identifies as LGBTQ, they are automatically placed into isolation, which can cause a myriad of issues, mental health issues, exacerbating those mental health issues as well. And I think that we need to do a better job of training, police staff as well as DOC staff on the lives and intricacies of the LGBTQ community as a whole, so that they're not placed in isolation and that they're able to serve out sentences in a, I guess, comfortable and safe environment. And that's all.
Shane, thank you for your testimony.
Next, we have Bran Todd.
I didn't hear the two beeps. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Hey y'all, I am Ren Tabi, pronoun she, her. I am the outreach manager with Baltimore Safe Haven. Just wanted to share a couple instances we've had in in 2021, as we have been serving both cis and trans clients doing sex work and also folks experiencing addiction and or homelessness. On Saturday, May 1st, client Erica had been stabbed on North Avenue. Witnesses who were previous employees of BSH had shared that the EMT staff had been rude to them when they denied being taken in the ambulance because of expenses. We ended up taking them to the ER. On Saturday, June 19th, as we were passing Penn Station early in the morning, we saw trans client Cam being harassed by and followed by a man. Fortunately, she knew us, and when we stopped, she was very willing to get in so we could take her home safely. On Friday, July 30th, we pulled up to the Charles Village Stroll and saw one of our clients being punched several times on her head. Her assailant was yelling and threatening as he pulled away in the car. We got out to offer her water, and we had a first aid kit. And we stayed idled nearby once EMTs and police came to speak with and check on her. Sorry, looking. We've had folks report to us, instances of being sexually assaulted during our outreach, people's windows being smashed into, Johns that they've dealt with in sex work, making them feel unsafe. Folks asking for rooms when we are already full. BSH has been doing a lot of work all through the pandemic nonstop. And we could really use the city's more support because we could do a lot more with more funding. And that's all I have to say right now.
Ren, we appreciate your testimony and thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Next, we have Tamar Jones.
Hello. Hi, how are you guys today? I wanted to start off by saying how my pronouns are she and her. My name is Tamar Jones, and I'm a community person. I wanted to say how the injustice that's going on through Maryland, through the LGBT community, how we're fighting for our lives and we're in a state of emergency, and how we need assistance and we need help each and every day. It's not safe for us to walk through the street as who we want to be, and we don't have the assistance. We don't have the help. We need the housing. We need the health care. We need the harm reduction that Baltimore Safe Haven provides for us so far. We need the housing. We need help. And what are you guys steps particularly going to do to help us? And people are dying out here. People are losing their lives through the harm reduction. People are losing lives for not having housing, not having a home, not having a way to take a shower, a drop-in center, except for to go to Baltimore Safe Haven. But we need more funding. Like, I believe a lot of programs have lost their funding through the pandemic. So where's the investors that is going to invest in help to put into the programs that are doing the work on the ground?
And Tamar, thanks for your powerful testimony. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next, we have Janae Tyler.
Hello, everyone. Again, I am Janice Tyler. I am the Director of Operations for Baltimore Safe Haven. I wanted to speak to you guys about the violence that's happening amongst our community. This year in 2021, we are experiencing the deadliest year for transgender individuals, especially those of Black and brown color. Right now, we are at 46 people, 46 trans-identified persons who have died for being themselves, for simply existing. This is a state of emergency. This is the outrage. We need resources. We need mental health. We need education. We need help. We need housing resources for our communities. I appreciate what we have thus far, but I would love to see more. I would love to see the city pour into each of their communities, especially the trans community. I admittedly am new to the city. However, I am not new to activism. I'm a former commissioner for LGBT affairs in Philadelphia. And I would love to work with you guys to kind of expand and reach upon what is happening amongst the transgender communities, not just in Baltimore, but also in Maryland, and see what we can do to expand resources.
Janae, welcome to Baltimore City. Thank you for your advocacy and thank you for your testimony today.
Next, we have one caller. Caller, you should be unmuted if you'd like to testify. Okay. Did not sound like a response. Madam Chair, I think that is all of the testimony that we have.
So first, I just want to thank everyone who signed up to testify, who testified today. I also want to make sure that we thank Aya Damons from Baltimore Safe Haven for starting the conversation today prior to the official testimony, and for the work and the advocacy that all of our organizations are doing across the city. That does conclude public testimony on Resolution 21-0069R. At the sponsor's request, we will be voting this resolution out today. I will make a motion, and I'm going to be making a motion to recommend the resolution favorably. Is there anyone who will second it at this time?
Second, Conway.
Okay, McCray for the motion, second for Conway. McCray is a yes. Councilman Bullock?
Yes.
Councilman Conway?
Yes.
Councilman Dorsey? We're going to come back to Councilman Dorsey. I do see that he's still here. At this time, we'll come back to him to see if we can get a vote. Councilwoman Porter?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Torrance?
Hi, Madam Chair.
Is Councilman Schleifer still with us? And at this time, I don't. Can you give us a voice vote? Okay, so for the vote, I'm going to have Councilman Dorsey as absent at this time. Councilman Schleifer is absent at this time, but the motion has passed 5-0. The committee will report the resolution at the next city council meeting. We do thank you all for joining us. This morning is when we started, but we're finishing in the afternoon. So we thank you all. The hearing is now adjourned, and everyone have a great day.